to Drink It In, the podcast. I am so excited. I love interviewing people, but when I get to interview a friend and you get to join in and listen to our conversation, I think it makes it that much more entertaining. So today I have Raquel here, and Raquel's going to introduce herself. So we're going to get to know her a little bit better and a little bit deeper, hopefully. Go ahead, Raquel.
Hi, my name is Raquel. I was born in Venezuela, grew up in Panama. I met Aliyah 12 years ago, and I live with my 4 kids in Harnof. And I teach Torah. This is what I do every day of my life. I teach women of all ages, sometimes men, not that much. And I have a very big passion for teaching and for giving over truth, sometimes not too politically correct, but always truth. And I have a lot of passion to help people. And, I feel I have a gift and I want to share it with the world.
Right. I could definitely relate with that. So I want to find out about the young Raquel. When you were a little girl, Panama, Venezuela, wherever you're located, how did you envision yourself as a little girl? Like, when I grow up, I want to be.
Wow. Okay. So Venezuela, I don't remember anything. I think I left when I was 6 years old. We were on an island. There was no juice. We didn't do anything. When I was growing up, I was always like a really great student. And I had a lot of talents that I used to practice. So I always thought I was going to be a pianist, to be honest. But at the same time, I'm very, very nervous and I get stage fright, even though I'm a public speaker. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm very shy and that's why I make a lot of jokes. And then at one point, I think I didn't envision myself doing anything because, to be honest, I didn't have like the best of self-esteem. So even though I knew there were things that I could do, I didn't thought I could necessarily achieve a lot of things. But I think when I was little, I wanted to be a pianist. And then there was a point that I wanted to be I call it like a rubisa, which is like a rabbit in Spanish. But at this point, I was not religious. So I had no idea what this meant or, anything. I don't know, maybe I was prophesizing and I didn't know about it so much.
Oh, wow. So, pianist, did you actually take piano lessons?
Yeah, I play piano every Friday. I mean, I used to be very good. And then I had a fire, so I lost my piano for a year. I used to play a lot of classical music. Now I only play popular music and I play by ear and I don't really have so much time. But every Friday, my kids know I send them to do something and I sit to play piano for 2 hours. And I express all of my feelings and I love it. Yeah.
Wow, such a nice outlet. Have any of
Yeah.
your kids gotten that talent? Do anyone else play piano?
So I hope everyone is going to play piano, but the 8-year-old, she's taking piano lessons already. She has the same issues that I do, which is she's very talented, but she gets everything very quickly, so doesn't want to practice. It's a problem with smart people. Anyways, but hopefully later on, she will be a little bit more responsible and more serious about it.
Okay.
And everyone else, they all want to play piano. Whenever I'm playing piano, they all come, they start playing, and we sing. And when it was like the war, and we did all of the songs, so I would sit and I would go gamba shaot, and all of my kids would sing. So yeah, bonding time.
That's so nice. So such a nice
Yeah,
bonding and
I'll
connecting.
send you a recording so you see.
Okay, fine. Now let's touch on when you said you didn't know anything about religion, and maybe you were like prophesizing of what you were going to be. Can we go on that religious journey? Like, what sparked it? What happened? How did it all come about?
So my dad is Israeli. He was born in Egypt. They moved to Israel. So he like didn't do anything, didn't keep anything, and he went to Latin America like all Israelis after the army. I did not learn any Hebrew from him till today. Is his fault. My mom, she was born in Panama, but she was born in like the outskirts of Panama. So she literally went to she went to a non school when she was little. She went to a convent. And their family was very, very poor. So she also didn't know anything, even though it seems to be my great grandfather from my mom's side was a very big rabbi, but they also didn't know anything. And even though nowadays the community in Panama is wow, back then people didn't keep anything. So to make the story short, I have no idea so much of family history, but they ended up in Margarita. It's an island in Venezuela. And they didn't keep anything. But my oldest sister, she lived in Mexico for a few years when she was like a teenager by one of my aunts, and she started, I don't know, to keep Shabbat. We have a very big age gap. And then at 10 years old, I decided that I wanted to keep Shabbat. I didn't really knew so much what that meant. At that time in Panama, no one kept Shabbat. Me and my sister decided we wanted to keep Shabbat. And then it was like kind of a very weird journey. We're Sephardi. So in Sephardi world, you could be kosher from meat, but not from cheese, outside, but not inside, inside, but not outside. So I was the only one in my whole family that became kosher from cheese. It was a very hard journey, especially when later, much later on, I did became religious. I was the only one that, I was even Halaf Israel when not even like, the rabbis in Panama were Halaf Israel. So it was very, very hard. But at 11 years old, I just had this drive. I remember going to like, like youth movements, and
Hmm.
it wasn't religious at all, but I don't know what it was. There was a spark. Um, but then I like to party. So at one point, I just wanted to party, and that's all I wanted to do. And, religion went down the drain. But thank God I ended up in Israel at 18 years old. It's a very, very, long thing. But I wouldn't say I knew much about religion or anything else, or even had a relationship with God when I was young. Actually, in my older years, I realized that I was, mad at God for a very long period of my life. Um, but I don't know. I guess there was a part of me that felt that if I would connect with God, then life would be easier and better. Um, so I think as a child, I was very hopeful, I guess, for a better future. I don't know, and maybe that applied in such a way. But really, I don't know. I don't know so much about my childhood. I kind of like blocked a lot of things, so I'm not so
Hmm.
in touch. Yeah,
Okay. So it's interesting that you just mentioned that you somewhere you felt that if you had a better connection with God, your life would be better.
yeah. I felt that, especially when I did started learning about Judaism. I thought, if I'm gonna be religious, I'm gonna get married young, have children young, gonna lose 10 kilos. If I'm already taking advantage, I might as well, ask for everything. Yeah, actually, I feel like, and I always say this when I'm teaching my classes, that, Kiruv, it's amazing, but I think that sometimes they sort of sell something that doesn't exist. Because we want to
Hmm.
get people to love Judaism and to want to connect to Judaism. So it's like sushi Shabbat and this Shabbat and, hola mi convention in Spain and you get chueki. But, life is not like that. It's not all sparkles. It's like, when you have your wedding day, but that's not what marriage is about, So I feel like it's like that.
Hmm.
So for sure, for me, I thought like, if I get closer to God, then life is going to be amazing. And I'm
Right.
not going to be challenged, but that did not happen, but fine.
Right. But if we're just going to touch on that example that you gave about the wedding day, and that's not what marriage is like. I love that because that's something I also have a pet peeve about sometimes when I go on a Shabbaton and they take students or young professionals or high school kids and they bring them to these homes that are so lavish and they might start thinking that, oh, if you're an observant Jew, you have a home like that. And that's not what happens. You become a religious Jew, you don't become rich.
Yeah,
You become rich
in the
spiritually.
inside, spiritual, in your attitude. Yeah,
But
I always tell my students, like actually, it could be that the closer you get to God, the more challenge you're going to get. And your life is going to get much harder. It's just like your attitude and your perception is going to be different. And
right,
that's what's going to help you go through with it and even, want it in a certain sense. But it's
right,
not like life gets easier or, you get everything you want. You have rich people everywhere and you have gorgeous people everywhere. And to be honest, I actually feel that people that are not religious get more of like a fairy tale. They all plan their babies whenever they want and they all plan this whenever they want. And it always works for them because in a certain sense, when you're not relying on God, you're relying on nature. So God allows nature to provide for you so that you feel you're in control and you don't need God. I think like the closer you are to God, the more challenged you're gonna be. So yeah, my students love that because I tell them, what's real, and they go like, everyone sends us, and sells us in a certain way. Judaism cannot be sold, but let's say just like the experience as like, everything is gonna be amazing, and you're like, no, you're real. It's hard. You might feel lonely. You might be very challenged, and you know what? You're gonna have a lot of struggles. So yeah.
I once read somewhere, and I thought that was also a very great mashal, is that when you have the burning bush, and the question is, why is it low down? A bush, a thorn bush, it's burning, but it doesn't get consumed. And that God is letting us know He's with us while the bush is burning, but He doesn't stop the burning bush.
Wow,
Meaning He's not stopping that fire. He's there to be with us in the fire. He's there with us for our struggles, but it doesn't mean our struggles are going to stop. But if we feel like He's holding our hand, perhaps we could handle that fire.
that sounds
So
beautiful and painful at the same time. But yeah, that's what life is.
I think so. inspire. That all
Yeah.
sounds kind of
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But like you said, if you really, work hard at your connection, you're hopeful that that connection will
You
carry you.
know where we say in the Birkat Amazon, I mean, I don't know if Ashkenazi people say this, but Sephardi people say, "Na raiti vegam zakanti velo raiti tzaik nezav." I
Yeah,
was young and I was old and I never saw a tzaddik be abandoned. And I'm like, for real? Because I go to Mea Shearim, I'm not saying all of them are tzaddikim, but, Besarom mevakesh lachem, these people are poor, these people are not doing so well. But I think, like, the key word is, velo raiti tzaik nezav. I didn't saw a tzaddik that felt
that's
abandoned.
right.
That's really the thing. Like, is you don't feel abandoned because you're walking with God. And, sometimes God is even carrying you on the way, but we cannot say there's no pain. It's like, like the Rav Susha story. I didn't suffer. I'm in pain. Life is difficult. I am challenged, but I don't feel abandoned. I think like God is giving me an opportunity. It's God is helping me climb to a different point. That's how I see it.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And, to continue on your journey, so then you became observant. And then you made a joke about, oh, you thought if you became, observant, this everything would happen so quickly. And I think one of the things you had touched on is, oh, I'd get married, have kids, yada yada yada. So obviously that didn't happen so quickly for you, correct?
Yeah, I always say like, everyone has challenges. People always say like, everyone has their package and their pickle. I'm like, sure, but some people get it from everything on the menu. Um, Listen, I'm not Barminam complaining or anything, but yeah, I did get everything on the menu. Like, I got a really big buffet, but yeah, I did not get married young. I did not have children young. I'm actually currently divorced. My children, all of them were treatment and IVF. None of them came natural or easy. And yeah, it's been, and millions of other things also at the same time. But yeah,
Wow. See, I didn't know that. Raquel, I did not know about the children part that they,
yeah, there's a lot of things people don't know about me because there's like people always see me happy, and
right.
I think people think like if you're happy, it must be because your life is very simple, and I don't know how people understand that, but no, I think it's work. But yeah, all of my children are actually each one is a miracle. We
Wow.
didn't have kids for 3 years. My daughter was born into my fourth year of my marriage, and after her, I had to do treatment for each one. Maybe
Wow.
that's why by the third and the fourth, they're twins. I felt like Hashem was gonna give me a very big gift. That's a story on its own. It's a very big miracle. But yeah,
Yeah, was that very strenuous, emotional? Because I've heard that people have gone through that. It takes a toll on you, and physically and emotionally and mentally, to go through that process to have kids like that.
yeah, it was incredibly difficult. It's like a struggle because from one side you want to be grateful and you want to have emuna and you want to accept like God is running your life. From the other side, you're like, for me, for sure, growing up the way I did and having all of the challenges that I did, there was always the question of like, when do I breathe? At one point, do you give me a break? And I just felt I never got a break on anything. From the other side, everyone in your family, all of your friends are moving on in life and you're stuck. And it's not only that you're stuck, I always say in my classes, the hardest state in life is to be in a state of unknown.
Hmm.
If you would know when it's going to happen, even if it's not at the time that you would want it to be, you can hold it because you can plan your life ahead. You can fulfill dreams that maybe you wouldn't be able to fulfill because you would be busy with something else. But when you don't know, there is the greatest fear of like, what if it doesn't happen?
Hmm.
What if, at the same time, I think people make it much harder. It depends what kind of people you're surrounded with. Some people could be very supportive and some people could be very hurtful. I was hurt by a lot of comments that were said without tact and everything else. But I think there was a part of me that always thought, like, by the time I get married, like, my life is going to get easier and better because, I feel like there's a part of us that feels like God owes me. I've struggled till now and God owes me. But to be honest, God doesn't owe us anything. That's just how we perceive it. Um, and yeah, I think it was very hard. And now I talk a lot about it. I think back then no one ever talked about it. But I personally talk a lot about it, especially because each one of my kids is a very, very big miracle. But also because I think in the religious world, a lot of the worth of the woman specifically
Hmm.
is you're married to a kollel guy, or at least here in Israel for sure in the religious world, and how many kids you have. And many times, when I had my twins, someone was like, oh, you must be having the worst time of your life right now. You must be happy, but you must be having the worst time of my life. And I'm like, no, I'm actually super happy. And they're like, no, admit it. It must be Gehinom. I'm like, no, I am super happy. And then this person, who's a very respected person in the community, was like, I have 8. I think it's a mechubad number. I think it's an honorful number. And I feel like a lot of times it's like we have to keep up and we have to have children. That's a whole different, discussion. But a woman's worth is based a lot of time in her children. I think there's a lot of classes on the importance of populating the world, the importance of having children. And one time I even went to a class, and the whole entire class was about how we have to be so helpful to mothers of little children. And,
Right.
and a mother should put her life on freeze because you're supposed to have children into a world. And even though I know it's a very big mitzvah, I just couldn't, like, how could you say this in an audience where there must be so many women that cannot have children? You're like literally killing them. And and also, like, who has tact for women that cannot have children? At one point in my life, I was, going to work every day. When women get pregnant, so they have nausea, so they always show up to work late. I also have a lot of things to say about that. Pregnancy is not a disability, but whatever, it doesn't matter. But they always go to work late, and there's always an excuse for them. But at that same time, I was months going to Shaarei Tzedek at 7 a.m. to try to get all of my injections. Shaarei Tzedek is a hospital in Israel, and still come to work on time.
Right.
And I would constantly be questioned if I was late. And I was like, do you know what I'm doing? Do you know what effort? Do you know I could just claim to have a sick day and never come? Do you know I just had, removal of eggs yesterday, and I had full body anesthesia, and I'm showing up for work today? And do you know that sometimes I'm like depressed? Do you think I get food for free? Of course not. It's not like anyone is gonna, not only me, but everyone, no one is gonna drop food in your house because you have a lot of free time and you have nothing else to do because you don't have kids to worry. If even Raquel Kirszenbaum made a statement about that in the Torah, and she's huge, and she for sure had Emunah, but the Torah actually says, that why did Rachel call Yosef Yosef? So most people think it's because Yosef means to add, so that Hashem should add me another child. And that's like the second point. But Rashi says, Asaf Hashem et cherpati, Hashem took away my shame. He gathered, lesof, my shame. So what would you think is the shame? The shame of not being able to have children, right? Imagine how much shame Rachel felt that she couldn't have children. But Rashi doesn't say that. Rashi says, like every time I read that, I'm like, I cannot believe that this is like Rashi making this comment in the Torah about a gedolat ador, okay? And Rashi says, because all of the time that a woman doesn't have a child, she cannot blame her, malfunction as a housewife on anyone. The husband comes home and there's no dinner. You cannot say, oh, the kids were bothering me. There's a mess. You cannot say, oh, the kids broke the vase. But now my shame is gathered. And therefore, it's sort of telling you like there's a lack of compassion for a woman that doesn't have children. And sometimes, I'm a very highly effective functioning woman. I have mental issues. I always say this. And that's why I'm always challenged with things that I have no control. And, but that's for later. But if a woman is going through so much pain, she's not going to be so highly functional. And Rachel is saying, no one would be there to hold my, not only my pain, but the fact that sometimes I'm also in need of help. And I also need a day off, and I also need a meal. And it's hard, and even though it was crazy hard for Rachel, I guess at least there was no treatment back then. So she didn't have to inject herself with hormones every day and, have extra long periods or whatever. So yeah, I think we have to create much more awareness, and also not be ashamed. No one is ashamed of having diabetes. I think about this for most challenges in life. I think that most things in life, people hold the person that has the challenge accountable for his challenge.
Right.
Instead of realizing God chose them for the challenge. It doesn't mean they deserve it. It doesn't mean they're being punished. It doesn't mean I had very hard comments at many points in my life from people that were very close to me. And even if I was coping with myself, I think some of these things were just like, very destructive and hopeless. But Baruch Hashem, we also went through that. We also rose. And yeah, we grow and we learn, and we hopefully teach and inspire others.
Well, you're definitely inspiring me, especially through this conversation. So I'm sure whoever's listening is being inspired. And I wanted to touch on so many of the points that you mentioned. So I'm going to go back to one of the points where you spoke about Like there's no deadline, and I think in life we're so trained that way, Raquel. Like, you go to school, you apply, you get in, you're going to get in by this time. You apply for a job, you have this. You get an assignment, homework, report, there's a due date. But when it comes to marriage and when it comes to having kids, there's no due date. Nobody tells you by June so and so or by May so and so this year you're going to be married. Okay, go coast. Time to relax and enjoy. And then once you get married, there's no guarantee you're going to have kids also. And people don't realize that. And I think it's automatic. It's just going to happen. It's even funny when I hear my own children speak about the other children. Forget about my children or what I used to say about my older siblings. I used to be like, oh my gosh, they're so amazing. They're so lucky that this came easy to them and this came easy to them. But I don't know what they went through. And then as I got older and I had conversations with them and really got to know them, it wasn't easy for them. My vision of things. And I think it's so important that people share those concepts and share that and are real and genuine like you are, because that's why the students love you, because you're talking to them and something that we're all experiencing. And, so funny you were talking about how to treat somebody. I remember, again, people who don't know do know. I've also been married, divorced, married, divorce, married. I think I said the right number of
Thank
times.
God now you're holding and married
Okay.
for all of us.
Yeah, progress. So is it? Hopefully it's progress, right? It doesn't mean that where someone's holding is not progress. Every stage of our lives is progress. I want to give off the right message. So I remember when I was a stepmom and I was looking at my stepdaughter, and here she was having little kids, and I was like trying to envision, how could I help her? How could I help her take care of her kids? What would my mother do for me when I was pregnant? And then I looked down at myself and I'm like, whoa, you're also pregnant. Forget it. My mother wasn't pregnant when I was pregnant, so it's like you want to do, but you also have to know where you're holding.
Yeah.
And that's important, and to understand what package you're in and what package you can handle and do. And I think that's very important. And I want to talk about that tact. Can we talk about tact for a second? Because I think
That's yeah,
because
that,
the season is I'm talking to women who are speakers, who speak to audiences and are from Israel. That's my goal. That because I really very much wanted to touch on women. I wanted to touch on Israel, and I wanted to touch on speakers, women who influence others and inspire others. And you also have social media. You speak to audiences. Have you ever come across that someone might have made a comment or raised their hand during a speech of yours or a sheer, and you're like, whoa, okay, what do I do with that one? Have you experienced such a thing?
yes, a few times. Actually, not through my specific social media. I do remember one time I was in a discussion in one of the Facebook groups called Confessions of About Chuba. Whatever, it was very funny. Someone was complaining completely about, not being able to use their phone on Shabbat because it was so hard to nurse their child. And I got into this whole thing, for real, be with your child and whatever. Anyways, and I was just in the chat saying we have to be positive and more grateful and not concentrate on the negatives and this and that. And someone totally went, Raquel, I remember you from Neve. It's so easy for you to say all of these things because you've never been challenged. Or I remember I taught in a seminary that it was mainly for people that had a lot of difficulties, a lot of difficulties. And, it doesn't happen to me so often, but they thought I was just too happy for them. And they said, I said, again, the same comment. And I think listen, I do this also. I think it comes from a desire to be like them in a certain way. I think it comes from a lack of judgment. And I think it also comes with being very uncomfortable with ourselves. So, whenever we're not happy with the way that we are behaving and with the way that we're projecting ourselves, we project it into other people. But, life has hit me very, very hard. And I think the harder I get hit, the more that I develop sensitivity and compassion that I didn't really thought I had that much. till last year, I was just like, like toughen up, life is tough, and we're gonna do it. And I would always talk to people, and I would give them advice, and I would be there. But at the same time, I felt like, okay, we can deal with it. And then I realized, if God only gives you what you can handle, then it means like whatever you're handling is as hard for you to handle as whatever I am handling is as hard for me to handle, even though objectively and subjectively, it could be that one challenge is much greater than the other one. But obviously, the person is feeling it in a certain way. Um, Listen, I'm grateful and also kind of like not so grateful that I have to be on the other side. But when you're in the other side for a very long time, you develop an incredible amount of sensitivity. Um, I don't know. I guess I have become much more human. And when you're broken a lot, you also are forced to develop much more humility because when things are taken away from you, then you understand what brokenness is. And one of my rabbis always used to tell me, "There's nothing more whole than a broken vessel." And now I really understand it, and I really appreciate it, even though it's very hard. But yeah, we have to get better. We have to get better as people.
I love that. Could you repeat it again? There's nothing more broken, nothing more whole
There's
than a
nothing more whole than a broken
vessel.
vessel. But there is a famous rabbi that says there's nothing more whole than a broken heart.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's like you said, if we don't have if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is constantly giving us things that we can handle, like when we say handle, mean handle easily, right? Then we're not developing our muscles. We're not developing whether it be our amuna muscles, our sensitivity muscles, our humility muscles. Sometimes you got to get a doozy in there.
Yeah. I
And
do think though, and I think it's very important that I think like when we try to occupy our space and do what we're supposed to be doing and not that much, then people respect that because people respect authenticity and whatever you're trying to bring. I think that sometimes we're not necessarily occupying our space or staying in our boundaries, especially in social media. And I think that's when the issue happens. I think that people can smell when something is not authentic and when something is not real. It's very funny because I'm not the most politically correct person because I'm Spanish and from Panama, and also because I always say someone has to say it. I'm cute, so I'm gonna say it. But I can't handle hypocrisy. There's not one hypocrite bone in my body. I don't even know like if I'm mad or if I'm offended or if I'm. You're gonna see it. But one of the things that people really have said to me is that I can say it because they know I am saying it from an authentic place and not in order to please and not in order to convince anyone or brainwash anyone or not in order to sell myself and be more liked. I know the risks that I'm taking, but whatever I'm saying, I'm saying from a place where I truly believe it and where I truly. And one of the things that I do that I don't think many people do, especially not speakers, is that I am very, very real. I am very honest about wherever I'm holding in life. I will many times use myself as an example. I've been, criticized by this from people on the top of like, you can't be too vulnerable to this, to that. I don't share all of my private things. But I am very aware. I just said here I have mental issues. I, think I'm super self-sufficient and independent. So God hits me in a way that you're dependent, and I'm not. I'll say that. I always say this is my greatest greatness, and this is my greatest weakness, and I'll talk about it. And when my marriage was struggling, I would always say, you know what? I'm going to teach you the wisdom of the Torah. I'm not there. I'm struggling. We're struggling. I mean, my marriage was a whole different story. But what I'm trying to say is, I'm always very honest in everything that I do, and I think people respect that, and it's also very nice for people. There's this image that if we're religious, we have to be perfect. No, we're human beings. You yell, like we also have struggles. We also grow up in certain homes and develop certain reflexes and behavior, and call me יותר גדול מחברו, יתרו יותר גדול ממנו. And if you're bigger than your friend, your יצר הרע is bigger also. It's taking me a lot of hard work to have understanding and compassion for myself because I was very critical of myself. But because I have had to develop so much compassion towards people especially people that have hurt me. By doing that and see their humanity, I've seen my humanity also. So it has helped me grow a lot.
So, few questions for you.
Yeah.
Is there
That's
like,
what we're here for.
right?
Anyways, yeah.
Was there a family member that you think you got these traits from, this real authenticness from, or was there a rabbi on your journey or a female person that you connected to and you're like, that I like, that I'm going to be like, or, or do you think you just developed it on your own?
No, actually, growing up, listen, I love my community. I love everything in my community, but I think we had to play certain roles in order to fit in order to be accepted. I didn't have those roles, so I never really fitted in. My whole entire family didn't fit it in so much, but I think we were taught exactly the opposite. I think that I grew up seeing the opposite. I think that many of these traits came from never having someone that I could see myself on, or that I could see the struggles that I was going through, or that I could share without being embarrassed. I think this is where it came from. It came from actually thinking everyone is perfect and I'm not. Everyone is this and I'm not. And I, I think, like, even in my marriage, I was married for 11 years and I never thought I could talk about anything with anyone. And, you just kept it inside. And it wasn't like I was pretending, because I would always say I was struggling. But at one point, I just realized if there would have been someone I could talk to, if there could be someone that would tell me I'm normal, then everything maybe would have been different. Maybe it wouldn't have, because this is what God wants us to go. Everything we go through is what God wants us to go through. But I think I've developed these traits because I want to be that for others.
Right.
I want to be the voice of the voiceless, if you want to call it like that. And, a lot of people tell me that, when my divorce came out, you even commented on that post, it like broke Facebook, not because I got divorced, but because I guess the beauty and the sensitivity and the compassion on that post. And people were, I was like scared like crazy, like my life is going to be over, my career is going to be over. And one of the comments that I kept on getting was, if I admire you before, I admire you more.
Right.
And I was like, for real? Because I think I'm at like the bottom of the pit. And everyone kept on telling me how courageous I was and how brave I was and how beautiful the words that I was saying and the vocabulary I was using for the feelings. And all of these people felt so connected, even though they were not going through the same thing. And suddenly I realized, wow, people need someone to give them a voice, need someone to see them. I never felt seen growing up so much. There were very few people. And I want to be that. And people told me I'm risking a lot by doing this, because, you're showing, I guess, the not so nice colors and, but what I always think is like, we're always playing the role for the grade and for this and for that. But the people that really need you, they're not getting anyone. And there's much more people in pain than in not. There's much more people that need it. And those people, they always remain alone and silenced and everything else, and alienized. And I decided that I want to be that. And specifically because I have a public platform, I'm going to use it for that. That's what I want to, I use it for millions of things. If you ever, in my videos, I'm always, very positive and out there and colorful and everything. But, we're made out of many parts. And I want to be able to say, you know what? In the Torah, we admire people with challenges. How did we get here? Like, what happened? God doesn't judge those people. God raises them up and put them on a platform. So because I have the public platform, it's not the biggest one in the world or anything, but I want to give people that. And yeah, hopefully I'll do that. And, if someone feels less alone, more normal. And I think it's even more, because when you see someone that has been challenged, but they get up and they're wearing, all of these flowers and cute earrings and smiling all day, it changes everything. So for anyone that really knows me, once I started sharing so much more, it was just like, I feel like I gave legs to a lot of people.
I think that's so beautiful. It is very lonely. It is very lonely to be in a marriage that's struggling, in a marriage that's challenging.
I think
Um,
in life, not only in a marriage, I think in life.
I
But
think,
yeah,
yeah. Well, I think because you think you have somebody, and
yeah.
but then you're alone. But you're in a house. You're physically with
Uh,
somebody, but you're
you
all
know
alone.
what? For years, I always connected to a line in Tisha B'Av. It says "Ve'ayake almana," and I always used to say, you know what's worse than being almana, a widow? And Barminam, I'm not taking away from their pain, but I'm saying it's like a widow. You know what's worse than being, it's the like. It's
Right.
always the like is the worst. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we have certain compassion and understanding for certain stories and certain stories less, or, it's okay. I guess, some stories just, get more tissues, but certain stories cannot be shared. But I
Mm,
think we cannot necessarily decide that because someone is married, they're not lonely, or
right.
because someone has parents, they're seen and understood, or because I was just listening to a podcast today from Meaningful People on the, this rabbi that helps children from divorced family, and he calls it my extended family. I don't remember his name. And every word that I said, I felt for my children, I felt for myself, and one of the things that he actually said in the podcast is, he said it, I'm not saying it, even though I say it also, is like, in a way, children from divorced family, and again, I'm not taking away from anyone's pain, it's not a competition or anything, but could be, not always, but many more times could be in a more difficult position than someone that is even an orphan, and last year I taught a class for Meaningful People on Tisha B'Av, from Meaningful Minute, and I said, like, there's a lot of children that feel like orphans in their own home with their own parents. There's a lot of, wives that feels like widows. There's a lot of people that are having their own personal, God forbid, we should never know about October 7th. And they can't share about it because they're going to be judged, and they're not going to, but we don't know what anyone is going in their inside and how they're dealing with it.
Yeah, I once heard a child say, 10 years old, from a family whose parents were struggling, not getting along. And his comment was, when he was asked, what was it like to live in such an environment? He said, oh, I wasn't really living it. To me, it was like a movie, and I just watched it. And that
Yeah.
was his life. That was his life, and those were his parents. And it's very painful. We're gonna veer it to another direction because I want to talk about healing. And you spoke about how you developed this sense of compassion. I know you wrote the book, and it's not out yet. It's going to be out very soon, and I'm sure it's going to help a lot of
Yeah,
people.
I dream that I hope it's going to change the world for good, Bezrat Hashem.
Good. And I know that was a healing process for you, for sure. Correct?
For me, yes, I wrote it in the midst of tragedy. I don't think no one has ever wrote an Emuna book while they're going through the struggle. Um, the whole entire book is actually from darkness to light, and in every single chapter, I experience a different type of darkness, and I teach myself and others the Emuna in the book that I need to go through in order to pick myself up from that darkness. It was for sure a process of healing for me, and I wanted to write it back then because we forget how we feel. And even though I was going through something so great, we all feel the same feelings and we all have the same things. And I wanted to not only to make people hurt and everything else, I just wanted to say, like, you can get up from the bottom, and you can, one of my favorite lines is, sometimes God makes you hit rock bottom, so you realize he's the rock at the bottom.
Right.
And that's what my book is about. It's finding God through all of the darkness and healing. Yes, it's actually called Stop Hurting, Start Healing. That's
Yeah.
actually the name of the book.
And so I know, like you said, you wrote it while you were in the trenches. That would be the English term for it, like you're in it. And when you finished it, did you feel a sense of like a load lifted off of you a little bit?
I'll tell you something that's incredible. I wrote a lot of chapters, and I don't say anything bad about anyone because that's not really my goal. But one of the things that I do a lot in the book and a lot in my life is I try to see people where they're at. I'll tell you something that's very important before I even want to tell you what I want to tell you. A lot of people write books about Emuna. Most of them have to do with death and sickness, which are horrible difficulties. But sometimes it's easier to accept because we obviously see that it's coming from God. It's much harder to have Emuna when there's choice involved, when there's people involved, when there's any kind of abuse, because we believe people have a choice. And even though people do have a choice, it's also from God. And throughout the whole entire book, I try to reach acceptance. And for me to reach acceptance, I have to be able to see whoever have hurt me as also a human being. Also not willingly, even though they willingly hurt you, it's only because they're disconnected from their self. And it's only because they're not being the image of God that they could be. And to be honest, I do it also. I many times hurt my kids, and many times I hurt my ex-husband and many other people because at that moment I'm not being the higher self Raquel and the greater Raquel. So throughout the book, while I'm healing, it's like if you ever see the tone of the book, it goes from like heavy to light. And I have read many, many times. And by the end, I have read a few chapters. And at a few times it has happened to me that I read a chapter and I was just like, did you actually write this about this person and this situation? And I started crying because I couldn't believe I was able to see them with so much love and compassion, to be honest. Um, you know, most people don't know anything that happened, and I'm not going to share with the world, but, the fact that I can have a relationship with some of these people and care for them because I do and do things for them. Normal people cannot even understand it, like they're just like, they can't grasp their mind. And I'm just like, because when I really try to see the image of God that is in everyone, again, sometimes I'm mad and I want to kill people, especially when it's like a Thursday and I have so much work and life is so hard and I'm there with all my kids and cleaning and cooking and everything. And every Thursday I get this like, wave of sadness and heaviness of like, my life is so hard and I'm going to make it. But when I mature and I grow up and, I'm just like, I actually feel a lot of compassion and it's like incredible. Sometimes people will even tell me, and people that saw the book, it's like you're painting them pink when I would only see them as black, and I think that for me is a lot of healing.
Mhm.
Like accept them also as part of the role that God wants. A lot of people told me like two main things about the book and the writing process. A lot of people told me like, why don't you wait to write the book until you have a happy ending? And I'm like, Bezrat Hashem, I should get married again, Bezrat Hashem. But for me, the happy ending is, and you said everything in life is progress and is healing. I don't know what God has in plan for me. And I hope he has amazing things in plan for me. But you know what? I got disappointed a bunch of times. So I don't want to have expectations because God doesn't owe me anything. But what I do know is I have a choice of my life and I have a choice of, making it the best that I can. Now, I'm not going to lie. Many times I do say like why it is like this and not like this, but it is what it is. And that's one of the main concepts of the book. But also, especially with my marriage and everything else, people were always like, but why didn't you get divorced before? Why didn't you this? Why didn't, and where there, and you know what I have come to understand? God chose this for me. I had to go through these challenges. Now, I don't want to think about it a lot because it would pain me to try to understand why would God put me through these challenges because I really think that he loves me. Okay. And then it doesn't make sense that someone that loves me would put me through these things, but it's great because I'm little Raquel. It doesn't make sense to me and it doesn't matter. But when you understand that it is God that chose it, I had to go through those challenges. So first of all, I can accept it from God, but I can also see the other side of the coin. And I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not, but because people told me I'm cuckoo. But just a few days ago, I was writing the acknowledgements of the book. I guess some of the perpetrators, let's call it like that, I wouldn't call it perpetrators. But I think some of these people, and someone was like, no one does that. And I'm like, but I am thankful. I think Tony Robbins, he says this line, like, if you're gonna, blame your parents for all of these whatever, then thank them for all of these whatever. And I wouldn't be me. And I wouldn't be able to give what I give. And again, I'm not saying, you know what, God, if you want to recreate me again and give me an amazing life, and I should be happily married and all my kids, and I should be rich, all good. But it is not. It is what it is. And that's huge healing. Huge.
Right.
When I'm being a grown up and a mature person, I do want to say this again. Some days I'm not.
Right.
But that's huge healing.
I can't believe that you touched on acceptance, because it just happened to be, I don't know, it hit me this morning. I guess I was having conversations yesterday with certain people, and I was also having certain challenges yesterday. And it just hit me this morning that it's something that is so hard for me to accept. I think it's hard is that I feel like people get away with certain things. I have this moral compass or whatever it is, or this value system, and why is it that I have to do X, Y, and Z? Why I'm keeping toe? I'm doing what's right, and the other party doesn't seem to have any consequences. In my limited vision of not keeping, and then what you just said was so powerful, because it's not just a matter of acceptance. If I would accept them for who they are, then I would accept the situation. But it's painful.
You're right. I think that many times, sadly, the system does protect.
Right.
I'll call them abusers, even though I don't want to call them abusers, but I think the system does protect that. And, there's obviously the rules of Lashon Hara, which if we wouldn't have to keep, we would be able to, clean our name and do a lot of things. But I think at the end of the day, one of the most important questions in life is, what kind of person do you want to be? Anger doesn't help me. Grudges doesn't help me. Questioning doesn't help me. Thinking of injustice, it doesn't help me. I'm not saying I don't think about it, and I'm not saying it's not there according to my logic. But I don't run the world, and I can't control anything. I can only, I can't even control myself, but I can try to do it. But it helps me be more free. It helps me be more free. And I think like the greatest struggle for anyone, but specifically for a religious Jew, is you have to have emunah and acceptance and love and emunah. And I think emunah is so hard, because from one side you have to know that God is giving you this, but at the same time there's a lot of consequences about what God is giving you, and you wouldn't have chosen them. I was just talking to someone about second marriage, and I was just like, even if I get the greatest guy, it's not the first time. We're not fresh. I'm gonna have to compromise. I'm gonna maybe have to be someone, a parent to kids that they're not my kids. And it was just so hard for me to like grapple that concept of like, it's not gonna be our, building on our own. And he's not gonna be able to hug my daughters. And I just felt like from whatever, it's gonna be the best it could be with what we have, but it's never gonna be the best it could have been. You know what I'm saying? Again, maybe no one ever has the best it could have been. And my issue with that was like, God, you gave me the situation, and you're giving me all of these lackings that come afterwards. You gave me this challenge, and then I'm being judged. My children are being judged. Maybe they're not going to be accepted here, or, every single thing that people tell you. And, and people say, you can't share this because then your kids are not going to get married. And you're like, aren't we religious Jews? Don't we believe that God has a shidduch for everyone? And I hear this from big rabbis and rebbetzins also. And I'm just like, but wait, aren't we supposed to have emunah? So what are you saying?
Right.
And I feel like that is the struggle. And to rely on God, to accept it, and to know that if He gave it to you, He's gonna take you through it, take you out of it, take you. But also understand, like, again, this is the package we're meant to carry. And obviously, I wouldn't have chosen that package. I wouldn't have chosen ever to get remarried. I mean, I hope I do, but I'm saying like, I'm sure you would have never chosen, even if you're the happiest on your third marriage. I'm pretty sure that you would have wanted to be the happiest on your first marriage.
Correct.
And some people do get a super happy first marriage. It's not like they don't. You know, people always say everyone has their packages. It's true, everyone has their packages, but some people have good lives. Some
Right.
people have good all around lives. But that's not our tafkid. And I feel like the more that we ask the question, the more that we're damaging ourselves.
Right.
And the more that we're going into like, you know, how do you call these things on the ocean that are like that twisted on the water? And at one point we're not going to be able to go out. So it's not serving me. And what I have to ask myself is, what kind of person do I want to be? And what is going to help me get there? And it's unfair that I have to do the work. It's unfair that I have to work so hard. But you know what? Only Hashem knows lefum tzara agra. And I really always think about this, that God really sees me. And that God really sees all of these people that are struggling so hard to have emunah, to stay connected, to forgive, to let go, to accept. Because it's not the same kind of struggle with someone else. And I hope that God sees us. And one of the things that I tell my students is, God sees the journey, and we're very hard on us, but God sees the journey. And you know, I sometimes tell people, like, there was one time this like a cartoon on Facebook, I don't know how you call it, this meme, whatever, and it was like men against women, and they were running on the track. And the women were running on the track with heels and button-down shirts and skirts, and then in the middle of the way there was like the washing machine, the whatever. And I said, I feel like that's how my life looked like, except that I also started like 10,000 kilometers back.
Right.
But I hope that God is seeing that I'm trying to skip the water machine and skip this and skip that. And who knows, I'm maybe keeping up with some people that, ran from before. So that keeps me going a lot, that God does sees the whole picture, and God knows, and God knows.
You know what? I'd love to end with, if you don't mind, Raquel. You said you that doesn't serve you if you're at like this or like that, and what you personally do, maybe on a daily basis or a weekly basis, I don't know, to help you be the best version of you. Is there something that you do that you want to share?
First of all, get my book, but it says a lot of things there. There are a lot of things that I try to do. I try to every day write things that I'm grateful, specifically of the challenges. I even wrote notes to people that have heard me in my notebook. I didn't give it to them, but it was actually funny because to one of them I actually did call them and say, listen, what you did was horrible, but I didn't see you either. I didn't see all of the goodness, and that has helped me a lot. And whenever I react incorrectly, or I'm also Sephardi, also Spanish, and also going through a lot of post trauma, so sometimes my reaction are not the best. I try to sit down and either write about it or think about it, like, what could I have done different? Like, where did this took me? This didn't, and sometimes I write the options. I even write what I could have said. That helps a lot. It's like, you're preparing for war. I feel like you'll fail 500 times before you succeed at one, but it's okay. Growth in life is elliptical, it's not vertical. And I really, this is what I do the most, is to just pick up the moments where God calls in the middle of the storm to say, I love you. I think, like, even at the darkest of times, there are so many tiny things that God does that are just like, I just call to say I love you. That's actually the one we did together in the Instagram. And someone just randomly sent you cookies. And that's God, saying to me, I didn't forget you. I'm sorry I'm being very difficult, and I'm sorry you can't see me now, but I see you. I'm sending you cookies. And those things keep me going for sure. And sometimes I daven and I say to God, I'm very angry at you. But I realize something very important. I'm going to quote from a place that it's not very kosher, but listen, there's spirituality everywhere.
That's
So
right.
when I was younger, there was a famous TV show called Gossip Girl. For anyone that's young and listening to this podcast, anyways, and I take quotes from here and there that are mind blowing, and I sometimes don't realize how mind blowing they are until I say them. And at one point, one of the main characters, Blair, for anyone that has seen Gossip Girl, says to Chuck, "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." And I reserve the right to say that to Hashem. I love you, God. I'm just not in love with you at the moment. But I love you. I'm still committed. I'm not taking off my kisui rosh. I'm not taking off my dress. I'm not stopping to keep Shabbat. And I'm still going to daven even when I'm super angry. And again, I'm not judging anyone that did take off their kisui rosh and everyone, because no one can measure the relationship of anyone with God. But and I tell him, I love you. I'm just not in love with you. And you know what? If it takes time to heal a bone and you need a cast, it takes time to heal a soul, much more than 2 months. Take the time that you need in order to heal your soul, and know that, in Hebrew we say, "Yerida letzorech aliyah." Sometimes we need to go down in order to go up. It's okay. It's okay to take a step back. It's okay to do whatever you need in order to go up. And it's also okay if it takes you a long time. Again, if a bone takes 2 months to fix, again, I don't know what level of challenges anyone goes through, but I feel like some of the challenges that I've been through, it's like whole body cast, it's going to take a very long time. So when I do that, then I feel better. And then I feel that when I'm ready, I'm going to get up. Yeah.
You know what, Raquel? I really hope that your book will be part of the healing process for many, many people out
Amen.
there.
Amen. I hope that also, because I put my heart and soul in that book. I don't think any book has ever been written with such an open heart surgery. So I hope that people are able to see my heart in there and understand that I'm talking to their heart. And I wrote it because, as I say in the book, I want you to go on that journey with me, to be able to pick yourself up from that darkness also. And, we're going to make it. We're all going to make it. And God loves us, and life is going to be amazing. Bezrat Hashem.
Amen. Thank you so much, Raquel. I so appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This was beautiful, and I feel like we could have gone for hours. But listen, people, we know you don't want to hear a podcast for such a long time, but I think we're only touching the tip of the iceberg here. But fine, we'll meet again.
We'll do it
We'll meet
again.
again. If you're a listener and you want a part 2, let us know. Anyways,
Thank you.
bye bye. Thank you so much, Jordana, for giving me the opportunity. And you are an amazing, I don't know how you call this, beautiful soul with so much insight. And thank you so much for listening and giving me the opportunity.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.